What do you feel is the reality of the source of our creativity?
That's another great question. I mean, and it's a mystery, right? A mystery with a capital M that we're never going to solve. But well, let me go into a little bit of detail about who the Muses were for people
Sure.
that
Yeah.
are listening and might not know. In Greek mythology, the Muses were 9 sisters, the daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne, which means memory. And the Muses' job was to inspire artists. And there was a muse of dance, Terpsichore, a muse of music, Calliope, and all, 9 altogether. And so sort of the classic image of the muse is somebody like Beethoven at the piano, and whispering in his ear is this female goddess-like figure who we assume is kind of telling him da-da-da-dum, that kind of thing. So for me, just in my evolution as a writer, and I'm sure this is true for every artist that works in all, after a while, you start to say to yourself, where do ideas come from? Where did that song come from? Where did this idea for a book come from? Or if I'm writing something in the moment and stuff comes out that I had no idea I knew or anything like that, where is this coming from? And I like the anthropomorphic thing. My answer is, it's the goddesses. I like to put a human face on something. But it could be the quantum field. It could be anything you wanted to call it, but there's definitely another level, at least one other level, maybe many, many, many. And I really do feel like we live here on the material plane, our ego, our small s self, right?
Yeah.
And we have a name and all those things. We have an arm. But above us on a higher level is what I would call the muse, but you could call it the self, you could call it the soul, you could call it, any number of things. And our job as writers or as artists is to open some kind of a pipeline to that. And I also believe that that dimension is trying to reach down to us. Like in The War of Art, I talk about that quote from William Blake, the visionary poet, where he says, eternity is in love with the creations of time. And what I take that to mean is, sorry if I'm rambling on here.
This is great.
Is eternity is the dimension above us, the dimension without time. And we're here on the material plane, a time-bound dimension. And if eternity is in love with the creations of time, that's like the muse looking down to the creations of time would be Beethoven doing his thing or any artist doing whatever it is. And if they are in love with it, then they are somehow participating in this. So I definitely believe that when we tap into whatever that higher dimension is, it's actively assisting us. It's our ally. And our job, which is a really hard job, is to open the pipeline to that and let it come through us.
Mm-hmm. So that process of opening the pipeline, I love what you just shared because, I love my musician and artist friends and talk about the creative process with them as well. And I play music too. And I feel, there's Michael Jackson shared that one time where he would be in the studio for hours and try to kind of refine his antenna to certain things in that field that we would talk about, because he was also fearful that if he didn't spend the hours in the studio making space to find that Prince would get it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so it very much feels like if you look through all throughout eternity, these powerful pieces of music or art that stick out kind of above the rest, that find most resonance with the planet and are impactful, come by virtue of really doing the work for a long period of time so that you almost become worthy of receiving it and become a conduit for it in some ways. Yeah. So any thoughts there about really, we want to tap in and be the antenna for these great ideas, but it feels like we get luckier the more that we show up and do the work.
Once again, I agree with you completely. That's certainly been my experience. I mean, I felt like probably for at least 30 years, I was struggling as a writer, kind of beating my head into the wall and never, getting better and learning things, but never being able to actually tap into something that really felt like, I'd hit something real. And then, one day I could do it. It just, and I do think it was the process of just trying and trying and trying as hard as you can. And then finally, something happens on some other level, whether, if you put it in terms of the muse, it's like the goddess is looking down, judging you. And at some point when she figures you've paid enough dues, or you've moved your attitude to enough humility, enough receptivity, that she says, okay, I'm going to give this guy, a couple of good ideas. So I definitely feel like, at least for me, it was I don't know what people like Neil Young, that starts out and like at 17, he's doing incredible stuff, or Bob Dylan, how that works. Maybe they're just born with a gift or something. But for me, it certainly was a long process of, beating your head into the wall before something